The voicemail sat in my inbox for 3 days before I could bring myself to listen to it. Mom's voice, usually sharp and critical, sounded strained, almost fragile. "Jessica, we need to talk about something important. Your father and I have been discussing our situation, and well, we think it's time we came out to Portland. To stay with you. We can talk details when you call back. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." I stared at my phone screen in my bright, sun-filled townhouse office, the autumn rain creating gentle patterns against the window. 5 years ago, my mother had stood in the cramped living room of their Cleveland home and told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. That I'd come crawling back within a year, broke and humiliated. That family stayed together, and girls who abandoned their parents for selfish dreams always ended up alone and miserable. My father had nodded along, as he always did, adding that I clearly didn't understand how the real world worked. Now they wanted to move in with me. With me. The daughter who'd supposedly ruined Thanksgiving 2019 by announcing I'd accepted a marketing position in Oregon. The daughter who'd been uninvited from Christmas that year because my presence would create tension from my brother Brandon and his perfect family. The daughter whose own mother had told her friends at church that I'd moved to the West Coast to find myself, like some kind of irresponsible hippie. My name is Jessica Bennett, though everyone here calls me Jess. I'm 34 now, and the marketing director at Summit Digital, a company I helped build from a scrappy startup into a regional powerhouse. I own this 3-bedroom townhouse in Portland's Hawthorne district. I have a boyfriend, Nathan, who designs sustainable buildings and makes me laugh every single day. I have friends who hike with me on weekends and gather for dinner parties where we actually enjoy each other's company. I have a life I built from scratch, 2,000 miles away from the people who told me I never could. But that voicemail triggered something I thought I'd processed years ago. The memory of my mother's face when I'd handed her the job offer letter, the way she'd looked at it like I'd presented her with evidence of a crime. The sound of my father saying I was abandoning the family, that I didn't care about anyone but myself. The email from my brother calling me selfish and immature, saying I was breaking Mom's heart for a job that probably wouldn't even last 6 months. I deleted the voicemail without calling back. Then I called Diane Foster, the woman who'd mentored me through my early career and encouraged me to take that leap 5 years ago. If anyone would understand this situation, it would be her. Diane met me at Riverside Cafe the next morning, her silver hair pulled back in her usual elegant bun, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed something on her tablet. She'd been the senior marketing director at the Cleveland firm where I'd started my career, and when she'd retired and moved to Portland 3 years before I did, she'd planted a seed in my mind that eventually grew into my escape plan. "Let me guess," she said before I even sat down. "Your family finally realized you didn't fail spectacularly and now they want something." I slumped into the chair across from her and ordered a double espresso. Mom left a voicemail. "They want to move here. To live with me." Diane's eyebrows rose above her glasses. "Live with you? As in permanently?" She didn't specify, but knowing my mother, she wouldn't ask to visit. She'd just show up. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup the barista placed in front of me. "Diane, when I left, they told me I'd destroyed the family. Mom said I was selfish and ungrateful. Dad said I'd regret throwing away everything they'd given me. Brandon sent me a 3-page email about how I was abandoning my responsibilities." "What responsibilities?" Diane asked sharply. "You were 29 years old, single, with no children and a fantastic job offer. The responsibility of staying close to home. Of being available when they needed help. Of prioritizing family over career." I could hear my mother's voice in my head as I listed these. Brandon got to go to law school in Chicago, but that was different because he was establishing his career. When he moved back to Cleveland after graduation, Mom threw him a party and told everyone how wonderful it was to have her son home where he belonged. Diane sipped her coffee, her expression thoughtful. "And when you got promoted to senior marketing manager 2 years ago?" "I sent them an announcement." Mom texted back, "That's nice," and then asked if I'd talked to Brandon lately because he'd just made junior partner. The memory still stung. Dad didn't respond at all. So why do they want to move in now? That was the question, wasn't it? My parents had spent 5 years pretending I'd made a terrible mistake, barely acknowledging my existence except for obligatory holiday texts. Mom's Facebook was full of pictures of Brandon's kids, lengthy posts about what a devoted son he was, humble brags about his legal career. My name appeared exactly once in 5 years, in a comment where someone asked about me and Mom replied that I was doing my own thing out west. I don't know, I admitted. But I have a feeling it's not because they suddenly realized they were wrong about me. Diane set down her cup and looked at me with the same direct gaze that had pushed me to take risks throughout my career. Then you need to find out what's really going on before you make any decisions. People don't go from, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," to, "We want to live with you," without a reason. And in my experience, when family members who've been critical suddenly become needy, there's usually a story they're not telling. She was right, of course. Diane was always right about these things. That's why I'd trusted her 5 years ago when she'd told me that moving across the country for my career wasn't selfish, it was necessary. That's why I trusted her now when she suggested there was more to this story than a simple request. I pulled out my phone and opened the family text thread, the one I'd muted years ago because the constant stream of Brandon worship and pointed silence about my own life became too painful. The last message was from 3 weeks ago, Mom sharing photos from Brandon's daughter's birthday party. Before that, radio silence for 2 months. I scrolled back further, looking for clues. Then I saw it. A message from Amy, my younger sister, sent at 2 in the morning 6 weeks ago. "Jess, if you're still checking this, call me when you can. Don't tell Mom I reached out." I'd missed it completely in the noise of muted notifications. My hand started shaking as I realized I'd been so focused on protecting myself from their judgment that I'd missed what might have been a warning. "I need to call Amy," I said, standing abruptly. Diane nodded. "And Jess? Whatever you find out, remember something. You don't owe them your success just because they're family. You built this life despite their lack of support, not because of it. Don't let them guilt you into giving up what you've worked so hard to create." I stepped outside into the drizzle, Portland's signature rain creating a gray curtain around me. Amy answered on the second ring, her voice hushed and tense. "Jess, thank God. Did Mom call you?" "She left a voicemail about wanting to move here." "Amy, what's going on?" There was a long pause, and I could hear my sister moving to somewhere more private. When she spoke again, her words came out in a rush. "Everything's falling apart here, Jess. Everything. And now they think you're going to save them." Amy's voice cracked as she continued, and I could hear her moving through what sounded like a parking lot, car doors slamming in the background. She must have left the house to call me without Mom overhearing. "Brandon lost everything," she said finally. "The law firm let him go 8 months ago. Some kind of ethics violation, nobody will tell me the details, but Jess, it was bad. He can't practice law in Ohio anymore." My mind reeled. Brandon, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, had been disbarred. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Mom made us all promise not to. She said you'd left the family and didn't deserve to know our business. She kept posting old photos on Facebook, pretending everything was fine. But Jess, it gets worse. I leaned against the brick wall of the coffee shop, rain soaking through my jacket. How much worse? Brandon had been living beyond his means for years. The big house, private school for the kids, that boat Dad was always bragging about, it was all leveraged. When he lost his job, the whole thing collapsed like dominoes. They lost the house 3 months ago. Chelsea took the kids and moved back to her parents in Columbus. Filed for divorce last month. Chelsea was Brandon's wife, a woman I'd met exactly twice before I moved. She'd always seemed nice enough, if a bit overwhelmed by my mother's constant presence in their marriage. "Where's Brandon now?" I asked, though I was starting to get a sick feeling about the answer. "Living in Mom and Dad's basement. Has been since June." Of course he was. The prodigal son, welcomed home with open arms despite his catastrophic failure. Meanwhile, I'd been exiled for the crime of accepting a good job offer. And Mom and Dad? I prompted, sensing there was more. Amy's voice dropped even lower. Dad took out a second mortgage on the house 5 years ago. Used it to help Brandon with his down payment on that McMansion. Then when Brandon started struggling, Dad kept lending him money, pulling from their retirement accounts. Mom didn't even know until this summer when the bank started calling about missed payments. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture that made my stomach churn. They're losing the house. Foreclosure proceedings start next month. Dad's pension barely covers their basic expenses, and with all the debt they took on helping Brandon, they can't afford to rent anywhere decent in Cleveland. Mom's been having panic attacks. Dad just sits in his chair all day staring at the TV. I thought about my father, a factory supervisor for 30 years before he retired, a man who'd prided himself on providing for his family. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The shame of financial ruin must be crushing him. So they want to move in with me because they have nowhere else to go, I said, the words tasting bitter. Jess, it's worse than that. Amy's voice took on a desperate edge. Mom's been telling everyone, and I mean everyone, that you begged them to come live with you. That you've been lonely out there and finally realized you need your family. She's spinning this whole story about how you've been calling her crying, saying you made a mistake leaving Cleveland. Rage flared hot in my chest. That's a complete lie. I haven't called her in over a year. The last time we spoke, she hung up on me because I mentioned getting promoted. I know. But Brandon's convinced them that you owe the family this. He's been saying that while he was here being a good son, you were out there building your fancy life. That now it's your turn to step up and help. The audacity was breathtaking. Brandon had destroyed his career and his parents' financial security, yet somehow I was the one who owed the family. Amy, I need to know something. Did they ever tell Brandon what they said to me when I left? About how I was selfish and ungrateful? About how I'd regret abandoning everyone? Silence stretched between us. Then Amy spoke, her voice small. Mom told Brandon you left because you thought you were too good for Cleveland. That you were always stuck up and ambitious in a bad way. Brandon thinks you just took off without caring about anyone's feelings. He has no idea they basically disowned you. So they'd rewritten history. In their version, I was the selfish daughter who'd abandoned her loving family for career glory, not the rejected child who'd been told her dreams would lead to ruin. And now, facing the consequences of their own poor decisions and Brandon's failures, they wanted to cash in on the success they predicted would never happen. What do you think I should do? I asked Amy, though I was already forming a plan. Honestly, I think you should protect yourself. Mom's already talking about selling their furniture, packing up Dad's tools. She's acting like it's a done deal. She even asked me to help her find a moving company that services Oregon. I closed my eyes, feeling the rain on my face. 5 years ago, I'd stood in their living room and listened to them tell me I'd fail. I'd cried myself to sleep in a cheap motel outside of Pittsburgh, questioning everything. I'd arrived in Portland with 2 suitcases, a futon, and a determination to prove them wrong, not for their validation, but for my own survival. And I had proved them wrong. I'd built a career, a home, a life filled with people who actually celebrated my successes instead of resenting them. I'd become the woman I was always meant to be, despite their lack of faith. Now they wanted to take refuge in the life they'd mocked. They wanted to benefit from the success they'd said I'd never achieve. And they wanted to do it while still controlling the narrative, still painting me as the selfish one who finally came around. Amy, I need you to do something for me, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions. I need you to start documenting everything. Every conversation about Brandon's situation, every detail about Mom and Dad's finances, every lie Mom tells about me begging them to move here. Text it to me, email it, whatever works. Can you do that? Why? What are you planning? I'm not sure yet. But if they're going to show up on my doorstep expecting me to solve all their problems, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. And Amy? Don't tell them we talked. After I hung up, I stood in the rain for a long moment, letting the cold water clear my head. Then I walked back into the cafe where Diane was waiting, her expression knowing. That bad? She asked as I sat down. Worse. They've lost everything, it's all Brandon's fault, and somehow they've decided it's my responsibility to fix it. Diane nodded slowly. And let me guess, they've been telling people you invited them? According to Amy, Mom's been saying I've been begging them to come because I'm lonely and regretful. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The same woman who told me I was destroying the family is now telling everyone I'm desperate for them to move in with me. Classic narcissist behavior, Diane said. Rewrite history to always be the victim or the hero, never the villain. She leaned forward. Jess, you need to lawyer up. Before they arrive, before any more lies spread. You need to protect yourself legally and set boundaries they can't manipulate their way around. She was right. This wasn't going to be resolved with a simple phone conversation. This was going to require strategy, documentation, and professional help. My mother had spent 5 years undermining me from afar. I wasn't about to let her do it up close. I pulled out my phone and started searching for family law attorneys in Portland. It was time to fight back, but this time I'd fight smart. Maria Gonzalez had the kind of presence that immediately put me at ease, which was ironic given that I was sitting in a family law attorney's office discussing how to protect myself from my own parents. Her corner office overlooked the Willamette River, and the walls were lined with degrees from Stanford and certificates of appreciation from various family advocacy groups. So they haven't actually asked you directly, Maria said, reviewing the notes she'd taken during our consultation. They left a vague voicemail about needing to talk, and you learned the details from your sister. That's correct. And according to Amy, they're already packing and telling people I invited them. I handed her my phone, showing screenshots of Facebook posts Amy had sent me. My mother had posted a photo of their living room with boxes, captioned, "Exciting new chapter ahead. So grateful my Jessica wants us close after all these years." Maria's expression remained neutral, but I saw her jaw tighten slightly. The comments are interesting. Several people congratulating her on the reconciliation, saying how wonderful it is that you've matured and realized family comes first. She's building a narrative, I said. So when I say no, I'm the villain who went back on my word. Precisely. It's a manipulation tactic, creating social pressure and moral obligation where none exists. Maria set down her phone and pulled out a legal pad. Jessica, I need to ask you some uncomfortable questions. When you left Cleveland 5 years ago, did your parents provide any financial support? Co-sign your apartment lease, help with moving costs, anything that could create a legal or moral claim? I shook my head. Nothing. I saved for 2 years before I moved. I had enough for first month, last month, deposit, and a cushion for emergencies. They didn't contribute a single dollar. In fact, my mother told me that if I was stupid enough to throw my life away, I could do it on my own dime. Maria made a note. Good. That eliminates any argument about reciprocal support. What about your current property? Is your name the only one on the deed? Yes. I bought the townhouse 2 years ago with money I saved and a mortgage I qualified for entirely on my own income. Excellent. Now, the difficult question. If they show up at your door, are you prepared to refuse them entry? I'd been thinking about this since my conversation with Amy. The image of my parents, suitcases in hand, standing on my porch while I closed the door in their faces. It should have been an easy decision after how they'd treated me, but 5 years of therapy had taught me that family trauma doesn't follow logical patterns. I think so, I said carefully. But I'm worried about what happens next. The Facebook posts, the church gossip, the family pressure. My mother is extremely skilled at playing the victim. Then we need to get ahead of the narrative, Maria said firmly. First, you're going to call your mother back and have a very specific conversation. I'll help you script it. You'll express concern about what Amy told you regarding their financial situation, and you'll offer to help them find resources in Cleveland, senior housing, financial counseling, things that demonstrate care without assuming responsibility. She'll say that's not enough. That family takes care of family. Good. Let her say it. Record the conversation. Oregon is a one-party consent state. When she starts making demands or guilt trips, you'll have documentation. Then you're going to send a certified letter, drafted by this office, clearly stating that while you care about their well-being, you're not in a position to have them move into your home. I felt something release in my chest. Permission. I'd been waiting for someone to tell me it was okay to say no, that boundaries weren't betrayal. What about Brandon? I asked. Amy said he's been telling them I owe the family this. Maria's expression hardened. Your brother's financial irresponsibility and career implosion are not your problem to solve. Let me be very clear about something, Jessica. You don't owe your parents or your brother anything simply because you share DNA. You especially don't owe them your success as compensation for their failures. Over the next week, I followed Maria's advice meticulously. I returned my mother's call on a Tuesday evening, phone recording, hands shaking as I dialed. She answered on the first ring. Jessica. Finally. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about your family entirely. The familiar guilt trip, delivered with surgical precision. I took a deep breath. Hi, Mom. I got your voicemail. You said you wanted to talk about something important? Yes, well, your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We're not getting any younger, and Cleveland winters are getting harder on Dad's knees. We've decided it's time for a change. Notice how she framed it. Not as a desperate situation, but as a lifestyle choice. As if they were retiring to Florida instead of fleeing foreclosure. A change sounds significant, I said, following the script Maria had helped me prepare. What kind of change are you thinking about? We want to come live with you in Portland. It makes sense, really. You have that big house all to yourself, we'd be there to help you, and we could finally be a family again. I know you've been lonely out there, sweetheart. This way we can all be together. There it was. The lie, delivered as if it were established fact. I'd been lonely, I needed them, this was all for my benefit. Mom, I'm confused. When did I tell you I was lonely? A pause. Well, you didn't have to say it explicitly. A mother knows these things. I see. And did I ask you to move in with me? Another pause, longer this time. It's been implied in our conversations. The way you talk about your life out there, it's clear you're missing something. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to stay calm. What conversations? We haven't spoken in over a year. Don't be dramatic, Jessica. We talk all the time. Mom, I have phone records that show our last conversation was 14 months ago, on my birthday, and it lasted exactly 4 minutes before you had to go because Brandon was calling. Silence. Then her voice turned cold. I don't appreciate your tone. Your father and I are trying to include you in our lives, and this is how you respond? I spoke to Amy, I said quietly. I know about Brandon losing his law license. I know about the house being foreclosed on. I know about Dad's retirement money being gone. I know this isn't about wanting to be closer to me. This is about needing somewhere to go. The silence that followed was different. Not strategic, but shocked. She hadn't expected me to know the truth. Amy had no right, she finally said, her voice shaking with fury. That girl has always been too close to you. Poisoning you against your own family. Amy told me the truth. There's a difference. The truth is that your brother made some mistakes, and instead of helping him like family should, you're sitting out there in your fancy house judging us all. Do you know what it's been like, Jessica? Do you have any idea the shame we've endured because of Brandon's situation? I'm sorry you're going through this, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't take pleasure in their pain. But Mom, I need you to understand something. I can't have you move in with me. My home isn't equipped for it, my life isn't structured for it, and honestly, our relationship isn't healthy enough for it. Your relationship. She spat the words. You're the one who abandoned us, remember? You're the one who decided your career was more important than family. And now, when we actually need you, you're going to turn your back on us? I didn't abandon anyone. I took a job in another state. That's what adults do. Adults don't leave their aging parents to struggle alone. Adults don't put themselves first when family needs help. But I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. You've always been selfish, Jessica. Even as a child, you always wanted things your way. The words should have hurt, but I'd heard variations of them so many times they'd lost their power. I'm going to help you find resources in Cleveland. Senior housing options, financial counseling, things that can actually improve your situation. But I'm not going to let you move in with me. We've already started packing. I've told everyone we're coming. Do you have any idea how humiliating it would be to tell them you refused? And there it was. The real concern wasn't their well-being, it was her reputation. She'd committed to the story that I'd invited them, and now she was trapped in her own lie. Mom, you told people something that wasn't true. I can't be responsible for that. You ungrateful, selfish girl. After everything we did for you. After raising you, feeding you, putting a roof over your head. You mean doing the basic legal requirements of parenthood? Her voice reached a pitch I'd rarely heard. You know what? Fine. Don't help us. But don't come crying to me when you're old and alone and there's nobody to take care of you. Don't expect Brandon or Amy to have anything to do with you after this betrayal. You've made your choice, Jessica. And you're going to regret it. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone, the recording still running. I stopped it and immediately emailed the file to Maria, my hands trembling not from fear, but from adrenaline. Nathan found me 20 minutes later, still sitting at my kitchen table. He'd let himself in with the key I'd given him months ago, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai place. Bad day? He asked, setting down the bags and wrapping his arms around me from behind. I leaned into him, grateful for his solid presence. My mother just disowned me for refusing to let them move in and solve all their financial problems. Good for you, he said simply, and I loved him a little more for that unconditional support. The certified letter from Maria's office arrived at my parents' Cleveland address 3 days later. Amy texted me a photo of my mother opening it at the kitchen table, her face going through stages of disbelief, rage, and something that might have been fear. The letter was clear and professional, outlining that I had not invited them to move in, that I could not accommodate them in my home, and that I was willing to provide information about local Cleveland resources but nothing beyond that. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My phone exploded with texts from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Aunt Caroline called me heartless. Uncle Jim sent a long message about respecting elders. Cousins I barely knew weighed in with opinions about family obligation. Most of them had seen my mother's Facebook narrative and believed I'd cruelly rescinded an invitation. I responded to exactly none of them. Instead, I followed Maria's advice and posted my own statement on social media, carefully worded and fact-checked by my attorney. I've recently learned that stories are circulating about me inviting family members to move across the country. To be clear, I made no such invitation. I'm happy to help my parents explore resources in their current location during this difficult time, but I'm not able to provide housing. I ask for privacy as we work through this family matter. The response was divided. Some relatives doubled down, calling me cold and legalistic. But others, particularly friends who'd watched me rebuild my life in Portland, offered support. Rachel commented with a simple heart emoji. Diane wrote, "Boundaries are healthy and necessary." Nathan posted, "Proud of you for standing in your truth." My mother responded with her own post, dripping with martyrdom. Sometimes you raise children who forget where they came from. Praying for guidance during this painful time of rejection. The comments were predictably sympathetic, filled with people who had no idea of the actual history. But then something unexpected happened. Amy posted a comment on my mother's status. Mom, Jessica didn't reject you. You told her 5 years ago she was making the biggest mistake of her life by moving. You can't rewrite that history now. The comment stayed up for 7 minutes before my mother deleted it and blocked Amy. But screenshots lived forever, and several family members had already seen it. Amy's phone started ringing immediately. I texted her a simple thank you, knowing that standing up to our mother had cost her significantly. 2 weeks later, I was working from home when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera I'd installed at Maria's suggestion, I saw my father standing on my porch. Not my mother, just Dad, looking older and more tired than I remembered. He was alone, carrying nothing but his wallet and phone. I opened the door but left the security screen latched. Dad. Jessica. Can we talk? I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or ambush. But all I saw was exhaustion. Just you? Mom's not in the car? Your mother doesn't know I'm here. I told her I was going to the hardware store. He shifted his weight, wincing slightly. My knee's bothering me. Mind if I sit? I hesitated, then unlatched the screen and gestured to the porch chairs. We sat in silence for a moment, the Portland drizzle creating a soft background noise. Your mother's not handling this well, he finally said. I gathered that from the Facebook posts. He nodded slowly. She's always needed to control the story. You know how she is. When Brandon's situation happened, when we lost the house, she couldn't accept that people might judge her. So she created a different narrative. One where I'm the villain. One where there's a solution that doesn't require her to admit failure. He looked at me directly for the first time. Jessica, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Can you do that? I nodded, my hands gripping the arms of the chair. When you told us you were moving 5 years ago, I was scared. Not because I thought you'd fail, but because I knew you'd succeed. Your mother and I, we built our whole lives around this idea that family stays close, that success means having your kids nearby, that anything else is abandonment. Brandon fit that model perfectly. He went to law school but came back. He bought a house 10 minutes away. He gave us grandkids we could see every Sunday. He paused, his voice roughening. And then you wanted something different. You wanted to build your own life, away from us, away from Cleveland, away from everything we understood. Your mother took it as a personal rejection. And I, God help me, I backed her up instead of supporting you. Because it was easier than admitting we might be wrong. I felt tears prickling but forced them back. You told me I'd regret it. You said I didn't understand how the real world worked. I know. And you proved us wrong in every possible way. You built a career, bought a home, created a life that's probably better than anything you would have had here. He gestured at my townhouse, my neat front garden, the street lined with trees and well-maintained homes. This is real success, Jessica. The kind that comes from your own work, your own choices. Then why did Mom tell everyone I invited you to move here? He sighed heavily. Because she can't admit that you were right and we were wrong. She can't face the people at church and say our golden boy's son destroyed his career and our financial security while our daughter we criticized is thriving. So she invented a story where you need us, where you're begging us to come, where she's the generous mother forgiving her wayward child. That's not just pride, Dad. That's delusion. I know. He rubbed his face with both hands. I know. And I let it happen because I was ashamed. Ashamed of Brandon's choices, ashamed of my own, ashamed that we're facing foreclosure at our age. It was easier to blame you for not helping than to face what we'd done to ourselves. The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in my chest. This was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Nothing. I'm not here to ask you for money or housing or anything else. I'm here to tell you the truth. Your mother made bad choices in how she handled your move. I made bad choices in enabling Brandon's lifestyle and not preparing properly for retirement. Brandon made catastrophic choices that hurt all of us. None of that is your fault, and none of it is your responsibility to fix. He stood slowly, his knee clearly bothering him more than he'd admitted. We're moving into a senior apartment complex next month. It's small, but it's affordable on my pension if we're careful. Brandon's working at a big box store and living with your aunt. He's angry at everyone, especially you, but that's his problem to work through. And Mom? Your mother is going to be your mother. She's going to keep telling her version of events, keep painting you as the bad guy, keep believing her own stories. I can't change that. But I wanted you to know that I see the truth. I see what we did to you, and I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I know how to say. He walked down the porch steps, and I stood watching him go. Then something made me call out. Dad, wait. He turned, hope flickering across his weathered face. I accept your apology. And I'm glad you're getting into stable housing. But I need you to understand something. I'm not refusing to help because I'm selfish or cold. I'm refusing because what you and Mom did 5 years ago broke something fundamental. You rejected me when I needed support. You made me choose between my dreams and your approval. I can forgive that, but I can't forget it. And I can't put myself back in a position where you have power to hurt me that way again. He nodded slowly. I understand. And for what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. Your grandmother, my mother, she would have been proud of you. She always said you had steel in your spine. After he left, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the rain. My phone buzzed with a text from Amy. Dad told me he went to see you. Are you okay? I typed back slowly. Yeah. I think I am. He apologized. Really apologized? Or Mom's version of apologize, which means I'm sorry you're upset. Really apologized. Took responsibility. Said it wasn't my job to fix their problems. There was a long pause before Amy responded. Wow. Maybe there's hope for him yet. Mom's going nuclear though. She found out he went and she's convinced he's betraying her by talking to you. That's her issue to deal with. Agreed. Hey, Jess. I'm proud of you. For setting boundaries. For not caving. For showing me it's possible to stand up to her. I smiled at my phone. Thanks, Amy. That means everything. That night, Nathan and I sat on my couch, my head on his shoulder, talking through everything that had happened. He listened without interrupting, his hands stroking my hair, his presence a reminder that family wasn't just about blood. You know what's wild? I said. 5 years ago, they said I'd regret moving here. That I'd end up alone and miserable. And instead? Instead I found actual family. People who celebrate my success instead of resenting it. People who support my boundaries instead of violating them. You, Rachel, Diane, even Mr. Patel next door who brings me samosas and tells me stories about immigrating from India. Nathan kissed the top of my head. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. My therapist says that every week. Your therapist is smart. You should keep her. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The confrontation wasn't over. My mother would keep spinning her narratives, keep playing the victim, keep trying to manipulate the family story. But I'd drawn my line, and I'd held it. That was enough. 18 months passed before I heard from my mother again. The silence had been punctuated by occasional updates from Amy, who'd moved to Denver and was building her own life away from the family drama. Dad sent birthday and holiday texts, brief but genuine. Brandon had apparently moved to Tennessee and cut contact with everyone. The family structure that had once felt immovable had completely reorganized itself. I was at Summit Digital's annual holiday party when my phone rang with an unfamiliar Cleveland area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me step outside into the December cold and answer. Jessica? The voice was hesitant, unfamiliar in its softness. It took me a moment to recognize my mother. Mom. This is unexpected. I know. I know I have no right to call after everything. But your father insisted, and my therapist thought it might be good for me to reach out. She paused. I'm in therapy now. Individual sessions twice a week. I leaned against the brick wall of the building, processing this information. Linda Bennett in therapy was something I'd never imagined possible. That's good. I'm glad you're getting support. It's been hard. Really hard. Facing things about myself, about how I've treated people. Especially you. Her voice cracked slightly. Jessica, I'm calling to apologize. Not to ask for anything, not to make excuses. Just to say I'm sorry. I waited, years of experience teaching me that my mother's apologies often came with conditions attached. When you left 5 years ago, I felt like you were rejecting everything I'd built, everything I valued. I made your choice about me instead of about you. And then when everything fell apart with Brandon and the house, instead of taking responsibility, I tried to force you to rescue us. I tried to manipulate you into providing the life we'd lost. That was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. The apology was so unlike her that I wondered if Dad was coaching her through it. But then she continued, her words becoming more raw and unrehearsed. My therapist asked me why I needed you to fail. Why I couldn't just be happy that you succeeded. And the truth is, your success made me confront my own choices. You did what I never had the courage to do. You left a place that wasn't working for you. You built something new. You didn't let fear or obligation trap you. And I resented you for having that strength. Through the window, I could see my colleagues laughing, Nathan looking around for me. My life, the one I'd built despite her predictions of failure. I told everyone you'd invited us because I couldn't admit that my daughter didn't need me. That you'd built this whole beautiful life and we were irrelevant to it. I needed to believe you were miserable without us because the alternative meant I'd been wrong about everything. You were wrong about everything, I said quietly. But not in the way you think. You were wrong that leaving meant I didn't love you. You were wrong that success and family were mutually exclusive. You were wrong that I owed you my life as payment for raising me. I know. I know that now. It's taken me 18 months of therapy and a lot of hard work to understand it. But I do understand it. And I'm not calling to ask for a relationship or forgiveness or anything else. I'm just calling to tell you that you were right. About all of it. And I'm sorry I made you fight so hard for something that should have been yours freely. I felt tears on my cheeks, cold in the winter air. Thank you. That actually means a lot. Your father tells me you're doing well. That Summit Digital just landed some big contract. We did. Regional expansion, 3 new offices, 40 new employees. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Really wonderful. She paused. Are you happy? The question surprised me with its simplicity. Yes. I really am. Good. That's all I wanted to know. That's all that should have mattered from the beginning. Her voice softened further. I'm letting you go now. But Jessica, if you ever want to talk, my number hasn't changed. And if you don't, I understand that too. You get to decide what our relationship looks like, if it exists at all. That's your right, and I won't fight it anymore. After we hung up, I stood in the cold for several minutes, processing the conversation. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. It wasn't an erasing of years of hurt. But it was something, a small acknowledgement of truth from a woman who'd spent most of her life avoiding it. Nathan found me there, wrapping his coat around my shoulders. Everything okay? My mom called. She apologized. Like, actually apologized without conditions or manipulation. How do you feel about that? I thought about it carefully. Relieved, I think. Not because I need her approval anymore, but because it confirms that setting boundaries was the right choice. Sometimes people can't change until they hit bottom and are forced to look at themselves honestly. Are you going to rebuild a relationship with her? Maybe. Slowly. With very clear boundaries and no expectations. But Nathan, here's the thing. Whether she changes or not, whether we ever have a healthy relationship or not, I'm okay. I built a life that isn't dependent on her approval. That was the whole point. He kissed my forehead. Come back inside. Rachel's about to make her annual terrible speech and you don't want to miss it. I laughed and let him lead me back into the warmth, back to my people, my chosen family, my life. Through the windows, Portland stretched out in all directions, rain-slick streets reflecting holiday lights. This city had given me everything my hometown couldn't: space to grow, permission to succeed, and a community that celebrated ambition instead of punishing it. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from Amy with a photo attached. She was standing on a Colorado mountainside, arms spread wide, face tilted toward the sun. The caption read, "We both made it out. We both built something better. Love you, sis." I saved the photo and slipped my phone back into my pocket. 5 years ago, my parents said I'd regret moving across the country. They said I'd end up alone, unsuccessful, wishing I'd stayed where I belonged. They'd been wrong about everything except one thing: I did end up exactly where I belonged. Just not in the way they'd imagined. The regret they'd predicted never came. Instead came growth, success, genuine relationships, and the quiet confidence that comes from proving yourself right. Not to them, but to yourself. That was worth more than any approval they could have given. Inside, someone called my name. Rachel was indeed making her speech, something about gratitude and teamwork that was both sincere and slightly tipsy. My colleagues applauded. Nathan squeezed my hand. Diane caught my eye from across the room and raised her glass in a silent toast. This was my life. The one I'd chosen, built, and defended. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.